Welcome back to The Big Picture. I'm Tom Harbin. Coming up in this half hour, after passing the Senate on Thursday, a bill that would make it harder for Americans to know what's in their food is waiting for a House vote. But why is the New York Times calling this a national GMO labeling law? We'll be talking about that in just a moment. Also, the Center for Biological Diversity has released a report detailing how the federal government allowed billions of gallons of waste oil to be dumped into the Gulf of Mexico between 2010 and 2014. So why are we finding out about this in 2016? Find out later in this half hour. And while Democrats are trying to save the planet for future generations, Republicans are trying to save children by cracking down on porn? Find out more in tonight's Daily Take. In the best of the rest of the news, on Thursday, the Senate passed a weak GMO labeling bill introduced by Pat Roberts and Debbie Stabenow. Now, agricultural and food groups are pushing the House of Representatives to take up the bill this week before Congress leaves Friday for a 6-week recess. The legislation is promoted as a national labeling standard by its supporters, but opponents call it the Deny Americans the Right to Know Act, or the DARK Act, because it actually makes it harder for Americans to know whether their food contains a GMO product. While the agricultural lobby and food groups have pushed this bill as a law to create a national GMO labeling standard, the truth is that this would destroy Vermont's recently implemented GMO labeling law that requires food companies to label their GMO products as produced with genetic engineering. And it would delay any national labels for at least 2 full years. And then the clear produced with genetic engineering label would be replaced by a QR code, those little square black boxes with the squiggly things that consumers can't read. They would have to scan them with their smartphone. For more on this so-called GMO labeling law that would actually make it harder to know what's in our food, I'm joined now by Alexis Baden-Mayer, political director for the Organic Consumers Association. Alexis, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom.
Great to have you. So what's the major problem with using QR codes instead of just saying produced with genetic modified or engineered or not produced with?
You can read. I mean, I'm looking at this can that I happen to find in the green room. It says partially produced with genetic engineering. That's simple enough. Yeah. If those words weren't there, I don't think that I would have assumed I could take my smartphone and put it up on this barcode and get some information about whether this was genetically engineered or not. The fact is that nobody would know that the information was there. And even when people are highly motivated, they don't use these QR codes. Only 16% of the public has ever scanned a QR code for any reason at all. I'm not in that 16%. I've never scanned a QR code. I don't know how to do it, frankly. I don't think I have downloaded the software on my phone.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would know how to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy enough to read things, and we expect information that we need to know to be in words.
Right. So really, this is a sneaky way of keeping us in the dark.
That's right.
And so why is the New York Times calling this a national labeling standard?
Oh, because the corporations love it so. Because they would like, why have nutrition facts? Why have the ingredients? They're talking about making sure that consumers see that there's added sugar in a product.
Right.
The corporations would much rather stick that behind a QR code and hide it from us.
So this could even be the beginning of a larger trend toward moving all the nutritional information into a QR code, and we're back where we were 15 years ago, where there's or 20 or 30 years ago, where there's no nutritional information, maybe not even ingredients listed. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. I think that's the plan.
This is, wow.
Yeah, the Grocery Manufacturers Association has its own branded product, the Smart Label. And that's what they say. They say consumers want so much information. So we can only have it on a website, hidden from them.
Yeah, so as you're walking through the store, you got 15 different kinds of bread, and you want to get the stuff that's made without GMO wheat. And so you'd have to take your phone and scan every single QR code, and then use that to go to a website, and then read the website, and hope that you've got a good connection for your phone in the supermarket, which is definitely not always the case.
Right.
And this is craziness. Now, that can of is it Pepsi or Coke? Pepsi. That can of Pepsi you have there says produced with, in part, genetically modified products. That presumably that's the corn that was used to make the high fructose corn syrup.
Yep.
that's on that label because of Vermont, is it not?
That's right. We're here in Washington, D.C., but we're getting the same label as Vermont. This label is being used nationwide. All of the major food companies have said that they will comply with Vermont's law and that they'll do it nationwide. So we don't have a problem in the marketplace. This is working, and there's no issue. There's really no reason for Congress to act.
Right. I remember when I was a kid, and this was a long time ago, like in the 50s and early 60s, that on the cans of soup and stuff, it would always say, complies with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking my dad, we live in Michigan. I grew up in Lansing, Michigan. Why does this say complies with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture? And he explained to me that they had the most rigorous food safety and food labeling standards. Mm. And so you saw that on right up until maybe the mid-'70s or so, and kind of everybody else came up to Pennsylvania standards. So we've had this situation in the United States before where one state drove the entire industry, mm-hmm. and only old farts like me remember it, but one state drove an entire industry to appropriately label things, and now Vermont is doing the same thing. If we can stop the Dark Act in the House of Representatives, and no other state requires labeling, isn't it conceivable that pretty much every national manufacturer of food is going to go with Vermont standards anyway?
Yeah, that's what's happening so far. And I think that states would adopt the same standard as Vermont with the same language and the same requirements.
Yeah. So what do we do?
Well, everybody needs to call their member of Congress, their U.S. representative. Mm. Just today, the House Rules Committee said that this bill will go to a vote sometime this week. So please call.
Yeah, well, and the phone number, by the way, write this down. The phone number is 202-224-3121. It's on the screen, 202-224-3121. And that gets you to the main switchboard. And if you don't know, and now we're talking about the House of Representatives here. Yep. So a lot of people don't know who represents them. House of Representatives, congressmen are sometimes fairly low profile. So if you don't know, just tell them your zip code, yep. and they will say, "Oh, you're represented by Joe Blow," and they'll put you right through.
That's right.
So that's the way to do it. Are there going to be any actions? Is there any political theater planned around this?
Oh, well, I've already done that.
Yeah, tell us about it.
I dropped $1,001 bills on the Senate floor.
You're the one who did that? I bow to you, Alexis. Thank you so much.
And then they charged me with assaulting a police officer and kept me in jail overnight.
Seriously?
Yes, it was a trumped-up charge just to punish me for a successful action.
For throwing money on the floor of the
Yeah.
Senate? Amazing. Now, in the Senate, this was supported. Of course, the majority of the support was Republican, but there were at least 6 Democrats and some surprising ones. Debbie Stabenow, she supported the bankruptcy bill that ended the ability to declare bankruptcy for student loans back in 2005. She's good on some issues. She's pretty corporate on others.
Yeah.
But Sherrod Brown voted for this thing?
Well, there happens to be a company called Smuckers that is in Ohio. And they gave Sherrod Brown $35,000 this year. He's not generally the type of politician who can be bought by corporations, but in this case, I'm afraid he was. But the cover that they gave him is that Smuckers, even though that they sell lots of GMOs that they don't want to have labeled, they also sell a few organic brands. And they've taken over the Organic Trade Association. They got the Organic Trade Association to come out in support of the Dark Act.
You're kidding. So is it time to reinvent the Organic Trade Association?
I'm afraid so.
What is the Organic Trade Association?
Well, now it's some of the largest companies in the food industry. Right after the Dark Act vote in the Senate, Danone bought White Wave, and White Wave had 2 seats on the board because they had bought Earthbound Farms. There's just so much conglomeration, and these organic brands are being merged with large companies that sell mostly GMO food, and they don't want it labeled. And if this QR code thing is extended to sugar and other things, even organic brands might want to hide like how much sugar is in your yogurt. So I think that there's a corporate interest in keeping information from consumers no matter what kind of food the brands are selling.
Amazing. We have a clip of you throwing the cash over the... Here it is.
Sergeant at Arms will restore order in the Senate.
I love it. That is so cool. The Sergeant of Arms will restore order And you did that. We have just a half a minute, Alexis. Do you think that there's a good chance that if enough people call, we can actually change votes? And is it a waste of time to call Republicans, or should we call everything?
The Heritage Foundation came out, or Heritage Institute came out against the Dark Act because they don't think it's corporate enough. It might lead to real labels at some point, someday. So I think that there are Republicans who will vote against this. Certainly the 45 Democrats who voted for the Dark Act last year, I don't think they're going to do it now that we've seen that food prices aren't increasing, there's no problem in the marketplace, this is working fine. So I think we'll get a better vote this time around, so please weigh in.
Cool. One more time, the telephone number 202-224-3121 if you want to call Congress. Alexis, thank you.
Tom,
Great to have
so
you.
much.
Great.